There once was a princess with long, beautiful brown hair. She was sun-kissed and illuminated in gold. She lived in a castle at the top of a whimsical hill. It was quaint and quiet. She spent most of her time alone, locking herself in. She was so beautiful, but to her, the world outside her castle on her hill was a very scary place. One day, she went to the bottom of her hill. As she was walking in a beautiful, bright field of flowers, she noticed a beautiful, vibrant pink flower, and it caught her eye. Out of hundreds upon hundreds of flowers, she picked this one in particular. As she gently reached down to pick the flower, as soon as her nimble fingers touched the stem, she let out a squeal. The beautiful pink flower was covered in thorns, in return poking her and drawing blood. Enamored by this unusual beauty, the princess decided to pick up the flower anyways and proceeded to put it in her pocket. The princess would then go on to put the flower in a clean vase up on a shelf in her castle. Days would go by, and the flower would never die. It would never wither. In its unusualness, its beauty yet horrifying nature, it stayed sat in its shelf, like it had always been there forever. Some days, the princess would pace back and forth in front of the flower, perplexed by curiosity and enamored by its uniqueness. As she would pace, the thought to pick it up would pop into her head. So the princess would pick it up, and every time the flower would make the princess draw blood. The princess would go on to do this over and over again, somehow expecting the flower to lose its thorns, hoping it wouldn't hurt her again. She would go around in circles over this flower, wondering why won't it die? Why does it hurt? Why is it so beautiful? The princess, very stubborn in her nature, would often give up on the flower. Away you go, she said, as she would put it in the depths of her closet. She would let out a sigh of relief and then go on about her little princess life. She was very beautiful, very romantic and charming. This princess went on to live her life completely forgetting about the flower in her closet, in her castle on her hill, until one day she was out getting a haircut and a charming man caught her eye. This was a perplexing situation because the princess was often the one catching eyes. It was rare for her to find a sight so intriguing, almost as rare as the crazy flower locked away in her castle. This man was a prince, but not the usual prince. He was covered head to toe in tattoos. He was unconventional, a bad boy, if you will. He was a free spirit. His unusual beauty hooked the princess immediately. Much like the pink flower, the princess decided right then and there that she wanted the prince. The prince wanted her as well. Over time, they would learn to grow a bond with each other. However, as time passed, the pink flower in the princess's castle began to grow. While the prince and princess were out having fun, the flower began to grow vines. It grew thick thorns and girthy, strong veins. It almost doubled in size and became brighter and more vibrant. When the princess came back after a party one night, the prince decided to open the princess's closet to help dress her. Unexpectedly, the closet opened and out came the flower, except it was big. It was big and heavy and quite intrusive. Perplexed, the prince naturally stood in awe. Not sure what to do, he silently left the princess alone in her castle. Out came the princess, noticed the prince was gone, face to face with the flower that had hurt her over and over again. This time, the flower hurt her beyond belief by making the prince flee. As she stared at it, she noticed it had made its way into the wall and through the floorboards and ceiling, almost as if it had made itself part of her castle. And everyone knows a princess's castle is very important to her. What started as a small innocent flower turned into a monstrosity of growth. For a moment, the princess hated it. She was driven by rage, remembering all the times it had hurt her. She fell to her hands and knees and began to sob uncontrollably. The flower sat dormant. The princess cried for days after the prince left. She was so sad. The flower sat calming as she wept. Days went by. It was just the princess and the flower, face to face. The princess decided she had done enough crying. Her pain must come to an end. She knew touching the flower would only cause her more pain, so she began to talk to it. From her heart, she would murmur up the words, I see you, I respect you. She began to reflect those words back to herself. I love you, she would say. The flower then began to shrink. It became less and less aggressive, and in return, the princess became more and more loving. The more she loved the flower, the more it reflected back to her. Love back to her. The flower eventually shrank back down to its original size. By this point, the princess was much less impulsive. She had learned to be loving and kind to herself. She respected the thorns on the flower. She appreciated its beauty. What she once feared, she now loved and trusted deeply. The flower helped her return the love and care back to herself. The princess never knew if the prince would return. But she did know that even if he didn't, she'd still have the love and kindness towards herself that the special flower brought out of her. The end.